Hi everyone, my name is Erin Graupmann, and I am the newest member of the Anaplan on Anaplan team. Today, I'm super excited to present the grand reveal of the Connected Planning Playbook to all of you. I think those of you who are joining our session today are especially going to benefit from this playbook. So I'm really fortunate to be able to present this to all of you. It's something that we've spent a lot of time on. As somebody who's super new to Anaplan, I've only been here a couple of months. It's actually been a huge resource for me firsthand to get to learn more about connected planning. And so really excited that we get to share it with all of you. So what we've done, over the past 5 years, we've built out a really robust connected planning ecosystem here at Anaplan. And we've decided to write down a lot of our findings to share them with all of you. We want to share the good, the bad, the ugly. We want to make sure that you're not making the same mistakes that we've already made, and we want to make our customer experience as smooth as possible. So the purpose of the playbook, why did we bother writing all of this down? We have seen firsthand that if you don't put in place really strong processes and controls, your connected planning playbook your connected planning ecosystem can really spin and spiral out of control. And we want to make sure that you don't learn from the same challenges that we've already overcome. As a disclaimer, these are just recommendations. It's just a framework. If you guys have other systems and processes that are working for you, by no means are we suggesting that these are better. But in fact, we love to learn from what's working for all of you as well. So as we've embarked on our connected planning journey, we've encountered a lot of challenges. And I think something that's really important to understand is that connected planning isn't difficult because Anaplan's this really challenging system to use. It's difficult because, quite frankly, a lot of companies just aren't set up for connected planning. So some of the challenges that we came across in our journey were the things that we've listed here. So things like organizational silos, inefficient processes, bureaucracy, just to name a few. And so we don't by any means think that we have the perfect solve for all of these challenges, but because they are things that we've worked through, we want to share with you how we've navigated through these things to hopefully give you some inspiration and ideas. So we like to think of connected planning in 5 pillars. So our people, governance, methodology, enablement, and engagement. And so the way we decided to organize our connected planning playbook was to make sure that all of our chapters were addressing one or more of these really key pillars. So I think this slide will be really valuable for you when you're determining if it makes sense for you to read the 60+ pages of insights that we've pulled together, or maybe if there's just a couple chapters or topics that are really going to benefit you. Great, so without further ado, we'll just jump right into the playbook. I think from a methodology perspective, we're going to just quickly walk through a summary of each of the chapters. I think hopefully what this will help you do is for you to understand, does it make sense for you to read this playbook in its entirety? Are there certain sections where you think you might benefit the most? So we'll just walk through each of them. So our first chapter after our introduction is strategic alignment and requirements. I'm not going to spend a lot of time walking through the benefits of connected planning because I don't think you would all be taking out a couple of hours of your busy day to walk through the benefits if you didn't already realize that. But some of the things that we've benefited from internally at Anaplan are our ability to cope with change, handle complexity, scale, collaborate, and really drive a new culture of connectedness. So one of the things that we discovered when we were embarking on our journey was that as the planning process evolves and becomes a little bit more strategic, we realized it doesn't necessarily make sense for the entire planning function to fall within the finance organization, which is often the case today. I know this from experience. I spent my last 7 years in financial planning and analysis, and cycle in, cycle out, the finance team was pulling together the plan and in essence almost owning the plan. And what I found from that was that it provided a lack of accountability from the business to really own and understand the plan that was being presented. For this reason, we've decided to create a role here at Anaplan called the Chief Planning Officer, or CPO role. So Simon Tucker, who you heard from earlier today, is our Chief Planning Officer here. We found it to be really, really beneficial to have somebody with a more holistic view of planning really quarterback our planning process. So we think it's a concept that's obviously super new, but we want to share it with all of you in case it's going to start making sense for more and more organizations in the future. So in our next chapter, we focus on our Center of Excellence for Connected Planning. So what is a Center of Excellence? Really, I think a simple way to think about this is a person or a group of people who are really responsible for executing your Chief Planning Officer's vision. So again, I think Pierre talked about this a little bit in his presentation about why it's great to have a Center of Excellence, so I won't go into too much detail. But some of the things we've really benefited from internally is that it's allowed us to maximize adoption. We've been able to provide consistency. We can connect different models and functions through the business. There's a new speed that our users can benefit from, and we really have that central control with local flexibility. So again, I won't talk too much about the Anaplan on Anaplan team because I know Pierre already mentioned it briefly. But what I do want to call out is that here at Anaplan, our Center of Excellence is referred to as Anaplan on Anaplan, or AOA. Lots of acronyms, I know, so bear with me. But I think the key thing for you to understand here is that at Anaplan, we've developed more than 100 use cases. And all that said, we're still a pretty small team. So by building out a strong connected planning ecosystem, you can really allow your teams and your processes to scale really significantly. We also have a wide range of backgrounds in Anaplan experience. So Mark on our team is one of the very first Anaplanners ever. And then the team also has people as new as me who've only been here a couple of months. And we have really diverse backgrounds as well. Great, so now that you have your executive buy-in and you have your Center of Excellence, it's time to understand what connected planning organization makes the most sense for you. So here at Anaplan, we use what we call the hybrid approach, which is where we have, like I talked about, kind of that centralized control with local flexibility. So what that means here is that we have our Center of Excellence, but we also have people embedded in our business who are really strong and enabled Anaplan users themselves. So if you think of kind of the two extremes, which would be the centralized model and the federated model, in the centralized model, your Center of Excellence would do pretty much everything, right? They would do the building, the architecting, the engineering, et cetera. The business's involvement would really be limited to being the subject matter experts or the executive owners. On the other end of the spectrum, we've got the federated model, which would really mean you wouldn't have a Center of Excellence at all. So the business would work directly with your IT team to pull together the data that they need. Both of these might work in different organizations, but we've found that the hybrid approach has been super powerful because we have a Center of Excellence who really advises our Anaplanners who are embedded in the business, and there's just a really good, strong partnership. Great, so next we have the Connected Planning Council. So communication is obviously important in any business, but I think because we've decided to go with the hybrid approach here at Anaplan, that makes communication especially important. So like we talked about, we've got our Center of Excellence, and then we have our Anaplanners who are embedded in the business. So if you look at our bottom portion of the triangle here, you can basically see that we have the builders themselves and the people who are with the business, maybe financial analysts, things of that nature, who are building. They are constantly communicating with the Center of Excellence. So we've got regular meetings scheduled, we've got Slack channels, lots of different lines of communication. If you kind of look at the next level of the pyramid, this is where our business owners really get embedded. So our Connected Planning Council is expected to meet less regularly, but we like to bring the business owners in from time to time to really get decision makers there on some of the bigger projects. And then finally, we have our ELT, whose involvement is pretty much limited to prioritization or really the strategic stuff. So because at our bottom of the pyramid internally we have an Anaplan on Anaplan team, but we also have an Anaplanner council, it's really important to develop really clear lines of ownership so that things don't get really complicated. So we like to have rules of engagement about when the Anaplan on Anaplan team should be engaged. And for us, that means that typically it might involve the data hub or integrations, security-related issues, governance, and then also models that are going to be cross-functional. So let's say you have a report for an executive that covers financial metrics, HR metrics and marketing, we think that the Center of Excellence is uniquely suited to kind of speak to that cross-functional work because they have visibility into what our different parts of the business are working on. And then the Anaplan Council is mostly responsible for managing their own workspace, their own production models, and provisioning access to those same models and workspaces. I think something that I just want to highlight, it's not to say that we think that every organization should have a Center of Excellence and an Anaplan Council, but I do think a really important takeaway that we want all of you to get out of this conversation is that it's really important to set up your processes and kind of rules of engagement up front, just to make sure that there's the right ownership and the right people understand what they should be focused on. Again, I think another reason, because we chose the hybrid approach here at Anaplan, that's another thing that makes enablement especially important. So because we've decided on a system where we want people within the organization being really involved with our builds, we need to make sure that we have a lot of people in the company who are enabled in Anaplan and really strong model builders themselves. So as a part of our training and our enablement, we do have our core training requirements. So we ask that everybody who wants to work in Anaplan takes the following courses: Foundations, Model Building, and the Anaplan Way. We're continuing to evolve our core training requirements, but these are kind of the basics today. And then we also like to make sure that everybody's up to date on our other training channels. So making sure that they're understanding what's going on in the App Hub, keeping up to date on community, and attending user groups like you all are joining today. From a digital ecosystem perspective, I think similar to how planning shouldn't be done in silos, we think it's also important for you to understand that Anaplan also shouldn't be used in a silo. There's lots of instances in which Anaplan can unlock efficiencies of other tools and vice versa. So here we have a snapshot of our digital ecosystem here at Anaplan, but what we walk through in the document in a bit more detail is which specific systems we're using for things like source systems, data flow, communication, collaboration, and productivity. Again, not to say that you need to be using the same tools that we're using, but we want to share what's worked for us. And again, would love to hear what's working best for all of you. Tactical governance. So in this chapter, we walk through best practices. So this, as a new Anaplanner, was one of the topics that was most interesting to me. We walk through some do's and don'ts of model building. We walk through things like the DISCO method, which I know Joey is walking you all through. But really, I think it is the Center of Excellence's responsibility to make sure that processes are being created that's going to allow connected planning to scale. And I think by setting up best practices, that really sets an organization up for success. Some other examples of tactical governance that we practice here at Anaplan, we make sure that we have a really clear data dictionary. So it's super important to clearly define what our different calculations are, who owns our data, how often it's updated, all of those things. We talk through data sharing, product offerings. So product offerings would be making sure that all of our Anaplanners are aware of our newest product features and really making sure that we're leveraging our most current offerings. So examples of this would be things like DocuSign. I think Byron will be walking you all through some of that as well. And then lastly, we have rules of engagement. So things like who could be a workspace admin and when is Anaplan appropriate. So when we're thinking through when is Anaplan appropriate, we like to ask ourselves the 5 C's. Is this thing that we're working on continuous, complex, connected, collaborative, and critical? And I think if you can answer yes to all of these questions, we think Anaplan should be a no-brainer. But on the other hand, we want to make sure you understand that if you're working on something that, for example, is not connected or collaborative, that you are considering your other options as well. One of our co-founders has a saying that I always enjoyed, which is, it doesn't always make sense to take a Ferrari camping. So just because Anaplan is this really powerful and awesome tool, you do have to keep in mind that there really is a time and a place for it. So security is the last of the 3 kind of main topics that we'll walk through today. So I hope that you're all still with me. But this chapter, we're again not going to go into a ton of detail, but if security is an important topic for you, please make sure that you read chapter 9. We do walk through things like user authentication. So this is our single sign-on through Okta. We talk through user access and the fact that we manage this through the business instead of centrally. But on that same note, if we have really significant model creations or changes, that's where the AOA team gets involved and really kind of audits and makes sure that things aren't getting out of control. And then lastly, our legal and security teams put together 4 classifications of our data. So public, internal, confidential, and restricted. And what this does is it really allows us to have a framework for understanding what information should be shared with who and how often. And so we walk through that in detail in the document if this is something that's of interest to you. Great. So chapter 10, we cover the Anaplan Data Hub. This is a chapter that I'm actually super interested in. It's something that for me, as somebody who's new to Anaplan, I've been amazed at how much having a data hub can really enable new users to be able to build things that are cross-functional. So what is a data hub? I like to think of our data hub as sort of the core of our connected planning ecosystem. So if you look at the the diagram that I have here, you can see up at the top we have all of these source systems, which are in sort of the yellow cylinders. And those funnel into our AOA hub, which is where the data gets consolidated and validated. What this does is it makes sure that everybody from human resources to finance is being able to pull from the same validated data systems and making sure that we're not all using data from various CSV files that may have been exported from the same system at different points in time. So some of the reasons that we're really big fans of the Data Hub here at Anaplan is that it provides accessibility to data for the business. So it kind of removes the need for the business to work with IT on a lot of data requests, and it really provides that responsibility with the business. It allows for really easy model-to-model connections, data consolidation and quality, validation, increased speed, that centralized data security that I was talking about before, scalability, and flexibility. All that said, I just want to make it clear that setting up the Data Hub doesn't happen overnight. It does take an investment, so we do want to walk through some of the reasons that a Data Hub potentially may not make sense in certain situations. So with the idea of a Data Hub, it inherently provides some data redundancy because we house the data in both our hub and our spoke models. So if you are limited by size, this is something that you'll want to consider. Another thing to consider is security and data access. And I think just inherent with pulling a lot of different data sources into one system, it just means that you have to be really, really diligent about managing the security and permission. So it's not to say that it can't be done, but it is something that's going to require some effort and some diligence. And then lastly, there's the time to stand up and the time to maintain. So for us internally, there was a ton of brainstorming that went into kind of coming up what the Data Hub should look like, but then also a ton of work to build it out. And every day, or every week, I should say, there are still requests for things to be added to the Data Hub. So it's just something to consider that while it saves a lot of time for the downstream users, there is a time investment that needs to be made up front. So in Chapter 11, we walk through the connected planning journey. So in Part 1, we talk through the use case journey, which is sort of to say, where should you start? What are some of your most common next steps? We also walk through the process, which is the Anaplan way. That's our agile methodology that we use here, and we walk through why we think that's important. We walk through some design, architect, solutioning, so we touch on the DISCO method, some of our best practices. We also cover request management. So given the approach that we've done, which is the hybrid approach, where we've got our center of excellence and the business all working in Anaplan, we use a ticketing queue to keep track of kind of changes that the business has and things like that. And then we also touch on keeping up with features, so making sure that we're staying up to date on the most current offerings. In Chapter 12, we discuss Connected Planning 2.0. And I think the important thing to remember is that we're just getting started. So connected planning is super new, and I think what this chapter does a good job of is illustrating our objectives for the next 2 years or so, which are primarily external integrations and machine learning. So because we're continuing to push the envelope of what connected planning really means, we want to make sure that we stay at the forefront of that. So while we're really proud of all of the work that we've done to date, we do want to make sure that we're continuing to innovate, and these are some of the things that we're especially focused on. And finally, our last chapter is really just a call to action to ask you all to provide your feedback. Like I've mentioned, connected planning is still in its infancy, and I think we can learn a lot more if we're figuring it out together. So just as we hope that you'll learn a lot from reading our Connected Planning Playbook and joining our user groups live today, we do also want to learn from you. So please reach out to us. Let us know if you have any interesting learnings. Let us know what you're doing better than us. We're super curious to hear. So how can you provide your feedback? Obviously, joining user groups today is a really great start, so we thank you all for being here. But please do feel free to email us directly as well. We can be reached at aoa@anaplan.com, and we'd love to hear from you. So in terms of acknowledgements, I just want to make it super clear that there was a huge amount of time that went into writing this playbook, and I'm super appreciative to the AOA team and Simon Tucker, our CPO, for putting all the effort into this. So thank you to everyone who was involved. Like I said, we're going to continue to keep this updated. We'd love to have your help as well. So for your reading pleasure, we've attached a link to the Connected Planning Playbook here, and we hope that you get as much out of it as I have. Thank you.